Greetings, one and all, to the most cursed, most cringiest corner of the internet. A YouTube channel content creator actively alienating everyone in both the analog and digital world. Welcome and good evening, wonderful dice of all alignments. I am Lunar D8. This is Let's Play Higurashi, When They Cry. It's a visual novel. And it's just your typical slice of life anime. Higurashi cicadas. Let me know in the comments, when was the last time you heard a cicada in real life? And how often do you actually hear them? I remember seeing the metal bat in the gym storage shed, but there was a padlock on the door, barring my entry. At the very least, I wanted to get my hands on it before everyone else arrived at school. I circled around the school grounds impatiently, but all I could find were things like pieces of lumber, nothing that I could bring into the classroom easily. Then I had an epiphany. I should search inside the classroom. If it was something in the classroom to begin with, then there wouldn't be a problem. I could tell that everyone's indoor shoes were still in their lockers. Good thing I came early, nobody else was here yet. I wondered, what could I find in the classroom? I don't think I could find an especially effective weapon like a bat. But it couldn't be helped at this point. Until the gym's storage shed was open, I needed to find a substitute. A lingering hint of naivete whispered that there was no way I'd be attacked at school. But such soft ideas would no longer protect me. To think that they were slowly making their way into parts of my life that I had once thought impenetrable. In the worst case, my own house might not be safe anymore. That was an incredibly frightening thought. But I believed that not considering the worst case scenario would have been even more frightening. Anyways, I will survive. So long as I lived, then I will definitely be able to escape this labyrinth of nonsense. Definitely. My exploration of the classroom came to an impasse. That much was to be expected. There was no way there would be anything that could be a weapon in the classroom. In case of emergency, there was probably nothing I could do but swing my own chair around. My gaze landed on the lockers that had come to be used for personal storage. The locker that Mion used to store a pile of games was among them. There was one for each person in the class all lined up. Of course, there was one for me as well. Oh yeah, there was supposed to be a tracksuit in my locker. Seeing me covered in mud would be strange. I should go change later, but first, I needed a weapon. If one of my classmates came, it would be hard to rummage through all the lockers. I swiftly began opening the lockers one by one. They were mostly just filled with things like gym clothes, personal items, and umbrellas. An umbrella? If I couldn't find anything better, then this would have to be my weapon. I was about to give up finding anything decent when I opened a locker that held exactly what I wanted. It was, without a doubt, a metal bat. It was well worn and pretty beaten up, but there was no doubt it was usable. In that locker that reeked of mold, there also hung a baseball uniform. It was probably the locker of a student in a Pee-wee league, or something like that. If that was the case, then he'd probably ask for it back. At that time, I could hear the voices of children scuffling their way noisily in from the hallway. Amongst them, I could make out Rika-chan and Sotoko. Good morning. Good morning! My, you're quite early this morning, Keiichi-san. I nonchalantly hid the bat I was holding behind my back. But what is with your outfit? You're covered in mud. Yeah, I had a little incident. I'm going to change now, so cut me some slack. With that said, I began taking off my clothes. Sachiko began to blush just as I expected her to. Changing in front of a lady? Have you no tact at all? I would think that a lady staring at someone who is changing would be the one lacking in tact. There's no changing room for the boys, so just deal with it. As Sotoko feigned disgust, she went into the hall still blushing. Conversely, Rika-chan continued to stare at me, preparing to change. If Rika-chan is a lady as well, then I don't think it would be appropriate for you to be watching. I'm not a lady, so it's fine. She deliberately pouted and looked at me with upturned eyes. Then, starting now, you're a lady. If I'm a lady, then I suppose I must. Rika-chan, appearing to be satisfied with being considered a lady, made her way to join Sotoko in the hallway. Just as I breathed a sigh of relief, Rika-chan stopped suddenly and turned back towards me. Are you going to start playing baseball? It seems that Rika-chan had noticed the bat. Yeah, just, I was feeling a bit out of shape, so I thought I'd try practicing my swing. I think it's wonderful you're taking care of your health. She was talking like an old lady despite her appearance. After saying that, Rika-chan started to leave again, but stopped and looked back at me once more. Please don't lose that bat. It seems she already knew that I took it out of someone's locker. There was no name on the locker door. I didn't know whose bat it was, but I would be borrowing it until they complained. It wouldn't be for long. Just until the gym's storage shed was opened. After quickly changing to the tracksuit, I checked the time. I still had plenty of time before class began, because I came so early. I took the bat in one hand and went out to the schoolyard. That was, of course, to practice my swing. I needed to make it known I would always have a bat on me so I could practice my swing. At some point, the sunlight had become even stronger. Disregarding my classmates as they made their way to school, I took my position in the shadow of the school building. I wasn't the academic type, and I wasn't much of an athlete either. I might get muscle pain if I just suddenly started swinging. I should at least start out with some warm-ups. I doubt anyone would think I was doing something out of the ordinary, which was the exact opposite of my actual mental state. I gripped the bat and swung lightly. The bat was by no means light. The weight would make it a reliable weapon when it needed to be. Of course, I can only pray that the moment I needed to use this weapon would never come. Just carrying around could deter attacks against me. At least, that's what I hoped. Huh? Kei-chan? What are you doing? Being bombarded with such a hysterical voice, I jumped. Oh, Keiichi-kun, are you on the baseball team? The baseball team. It was Rena and Mion. I was surprised to hear you went off ahead. What are you doing, Kei-chan? Can't you tell just by looking? I'm practicing my swing. For the championship. You can say it's part of my diet if you want. Diet, Kei-chan? Are you really that fat? Bet you didn't know. I actually have a beer buddy. It's a plump and jiggles. Plump and jiggles? Rena, you don't have to imagine something weird like that. To disrupt Rena from imagining something that vulgar, I ruffled her hair messily. Well then, I hope you make it to regionals at least. This old man will cheer you on. Regionally speaking, it seems that Oshima High is pretty strong. They say that Southpaw Kamada-kun is amazing. Good luck. Seems that they've made me out as some kind of local prodigy. But oh well. Well, if I really did make it to the championship, it would be a cinch. After all, I'd be the pitcher and catcher. I'd pitch the ball, then pass the ball I just threw, and change over to being the catcher in a burst of super incredible explosive speed. I laughed dryly at the ludicrous image. Coming back to my senses, I smashed the bat against the ground. Damn it. What am I laughing at? I pounded the ground over and over. With each impact, a reverberation traveling through the bat stung my hands. If they make me smile like that, don't allow anyone close to me. Don't trust anyone. No matter how many times I tell myself that, if they made me smile like that, I already knew quite well that they were demons dwelling in my smiling friends. But I just couldn't believe it. Did that kind of split personality really exist? Like how Rena confessed to the doctor? Were they simply being possessed by Oyashiro-sama? In other words, did a supernatural being like Oyashiro-sama really exist? And was it possessing everyone to try and kill me? Yeah, that would be wonderful. If only everyone were actually my friends all along, and everything was all just Oyashiro-sama's fault. You damn fool, kid, Shimabara, come on now. I yelled out, drawing out all the power from the pit of my stomach, and raised the bat violently into the air. Stop being so soft. As I screamed out with all my might, I beat the metal bat into the ground over and over. With every impact, my weakness was being beaten down. Smash. Forget. Smash. Don't be soft. Smash. Know your enemy. Smash. Like hell I'd let them kill me. My shoulders heaving up and down from my ragged breathing. I heard the first bell ring just as I calmed down. I gasped with a sudden realization. That was the final bell. As I felt all the tension drained from me, I let out a deep breath. My mind was in a muddled state. For much of the entire day, I didn't feel like I was awake, but didn't feel like I was asleep either. I couldn't say it felt especially comfortable, but I felt a kind of relief that the sanctity of the school, part of my daily life, had yet to be violated. How long would I have to keep on living like this? I could only grit my teeth and bear with it, as this living hell slowly gnawed away at me. Keiichi-kun, come on. It's club time. Club time. The sound of Rena's voice brought me back to my senses. Come on, Keiichi-kun. Stop spacing out. Bring your desk. Your desk. Everyone was moving their desks together as usual. That's right. It was happy, fun club time. It's peanut butter jelly time. Peanut butter jelly and a baseball bat. But I had no intention of taking part. I haphazardly stuffed the contents of my desk into my bag as I prepared to go home. It was a weak-handed gesture to avoid having to actually say, I'll be going home now. What's this, Kei-chan? You planning on going home right away again? Mion sounded quite disappointed. I'm just not in the mood. Could you just let me be for a while? The tone of the words that spilled from my mouth matched Mion's disapproving glare. I felt the air. It felt like the air in the room had dried out. Satoko looked like she was about to say something, but perhaps dissuaded by the mood, she swallowed her words and stayed silent. Nobody said a thing. I took that to mean that I could leave if I wanted. But the collective gaze of the four of them, like the tiny pins used to mount an insect in a display, held me in place. Rena was the one who cut through the heavy mood. Keiichi-kun? You just didn't like playing with girls, I guess? She said it in such a melancholic tone that it sent a wave of pain racing through my heart. If this pain was going to kill me, I wanted it to be the soft part of me that could still feel pain. I tore at my chest, violently tearing out the pins that held me in place. That's not it at all. I'd only be hurting myself by saying anything more, so I swallowed my words. Cutting things off there, I turned away and exited the classroom. They didn't speak to a word to me as I left. It was a long, dull trip back home, but I didn't lose focus. I firmly squeezed the grip of the bat, which was already soggy from sweat. Realizing that, I wiped it down with my sleeve. If something were to happen, I wouldn't want it to be slippery. Since this morning, I'd become especially sensitive to the presence of cars. Even while walking, my ears pricked up, and sought out threatening sounds and presences that could be closing in, and that was why I could hear it. Without a doubt, there were footsteps. Those footsteps had matched up perfectly with mine for a while now. From what I could sense, it was just one person, but I had no intention of being careless. Did they intend to follow me like the car this morning until we were in a good location to assault me? Then it wasn't a good idea to keep walking like this. I stopped and looked back. The wooded path crowded with trees responded with silence, as if there was nobody there to begin with. But I wouldn't be fooled. I was certain the footsteps were following me, and just as I stopped, the footsteps stopped as well. Meaning the person following me wanted to keep their distance. That was, without question, proof that I was their target. I held my breath, waiting for that presence to panic and start moving again. The trees rustled with the sound of the wind. The higurashi also joined in the dissonant chorus, trying to throw my focus into disarray. Had 5 minutes passed, or had I been like this for a whole 30 minutes? It was so hard to breathe that I might have suffocated. It seemed I would be the first one to panic. Without a doubt, he was lurking in the shade of that tree, with bated breath. Then I'd make the first move. I fixed my grip on the bat. I raised up to my shoulder, ready to swing at any time. "Hey! I know you're there!" With all my might, I screamed at whoever was hiding in the shade of the trees. But the presence in the shade didn't budge. Until the moment I found them, they had no intention of revealing themselves. "I know already. I know you're there." I screamed out angrily at them again, but even still they didn't move at all. "Then I'll go over there myself." With all due vigilance, I approached step by step. Stepping into the tree's shadow, I saw a human figure there. That figure was curled up like a small animal. Rena. When she realized I had found her, expression softened. She seemed apologetic, but wasn't going to speak a word. "Did you have some business with me?" I wouldn't accept that silence, and screamed the question at her. "Not really, it's just, Rena was in a panic with tears welling up in her eyes, but it was obvious that she had been following me. "What about the club? Since you're not... I'm not... That shouldn't matter. Don't mind me and just play." But I'm just worried about you. Thinking about how I've been acting up until now. It wasn't hard to imagine my behavior could have been perceived as strange. So Rena was concerned? At a quick glance, that's how it would seem. But I wasn't going to let my guard down that easily. Even if that really was the case. And she still wouldn't have to do something like that to try to tail me. She should have called out to me when I was leaving and gone outright with me. But Rena didn't do that. She kept her distance from me and matched my walking speed. On top of that, she matched the sound of her footsteps and deviously tried to hide her presence from me. Then after she realized I noticed she was there, she held her breath as she tried hiding from me. She wore a timid expression that would force one to take pity on her, but without a doubt, she was tailing me. "Stop following me." How? Still glaring at Rena, I continued walking onwards. After I'd walked a bit, she ignored my command and began walking again. So I yelled at her once more. "I told you not to follow me." "Eek, but my house is the same direction." "Then walk ahead of me. I'll start walking once I can't see you anymore." I moved out of the way and waved my bat violently to urge her forward. "I'd like to go home together, with you." Making a pitiful expression, she meekly squeaked out the words in a voice that she knew would cut into my heart. That agitated me to no end. I knew it was a lie. If you wanted to go home together, then you should have called out to me. Now you're just blurting out random lies. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." It seemed that seething anger within me was written all over my face. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Even without... I'm sorry? I'm sorry? I'm sorry. Even without me saying anything, Rena had understood what I was feeling inside. "If you get it, then go." I swung the bat, urging her to walk again. Rena looked back and forth between me and the bat. and started walking hesitantly, then stopped again. Go on, then hurry. I'm going. So please, stop with the bat. It's scary. Rena guarded herself while pointing at me, holding the bat. She may have realized that I wasn't planning on using the bat for baseball. I lowered the bat, but still guardedly opened up the way for her. Go. There's no problem now, is there? There was nothing else she could protest. She passed by me timidly so as not to set me off. As I watched her pass by, she stopped, completely after having barely moved at all. Hey! Don't stop! Then a powerful gust blew past us, barraging my face with dust. The dust got into my eyes and clouded my vision. While rubbing my eyes with my left hand, I swung blindly with the bat in my right, protecting the small opening I had presented. But Rena didn't even try to attack during the opening. Attack me? No. She hadn't budged an inch. I could tell from the sound of her fluttering skirt in the wind. As her skirt settled, so did the silence. At that moment, the voice inside of me immediately warned me of impending danger. I was caught by surprise. The smell of the air had changed. Without me realizing, the air around me suddenly felt like a calamity was about to befall me. It was like the air had suddenly become invisible concrete, like Rena and I were locked in this space. Rena didn't move an inch. Also unable to move, I stared back at her. Rena was the first to break the silence. Instantly, she altered her stance. I felt like I had just witnessed the shift from Rena into that other person who looks like Rena. But the voice was one I knew well, which filled me with a kind of bewildering pity. Carelessly, I felt relief upon hearing that pitiful voice. Well, excuse me, but, can I ask you something? Too shy to even turn around. Rena squeezed her voice out desperately as she trembled. What? Why do you have a bat, I wonder? The question Rena asked was by no means unexpected. I can carry whatever I want. But you didn't have one up until today. Why so suddenly? It's all right if I decide to do something suddenly, isn't it? Is it strange that I have a bat? But because, Keiichigan, you're not the kind of person to play baseball. It's weird. I couldn't tell what kind of answer she was looking for, and I was getting tired of answering her. I just suddenly got the urge to play baseball. Is that so weird? It's weird, she answered instantly, and that annoyed me slightly. I just suddenly wanted to play baseball. And I wanted to practice my swing. So I'm carrying around a bat. What's strange about that? Strange. Weird. Definitely. Why was Keiichi-kun also... Your ramblings are annoying me. Is it that strange for me to have an interest in sports? I tried to sound a bit more threatening to end the conversation. Until my suspicions about Rena were cleared, I had no obligation to answer her questions. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Don't get so angry. Don't get so angry. Rena still didn't turn around and spat out the words of apology, one after the next. Just one last thing. Tell me one last thing. I don't feel like talking anymore. Hurry up and go! I yelled loudly at her, causing her to flinch, like she had been struck. Seeing her in such a pathetic state caused my heart to ache sorely, but even though she was afraid, she stubbornly kept herself from moving. Before I was able to threaten her again, Rena asked her final question. Why is that bat the same, too? What did she mean by that bat was the same? I had no idea what she was talking about. What are you saying? I mean, why is even the bat the same? I don't understand what you mean at all. Say it clearly! Even still, Rena didn't turn around. After inhaling deeply, she screamed, I mean, why is even the bat the same as Satoshi-kun's? Satoshi being, Upon hearing the name out of the blue, I became dumbfounded for a moment. By Satoshi, did she mean the student who transferred out last year? No, that couldn't be. Rena had tried to cover it up by saying he transferred. But Aoshi-san told me clearly that he went missing. He was the student who sat in my seat up until last year. He was believed to have been demoned away by Oyoshiro-sama's curse. I don't know the details. I didn't know the details about his disappearance. The aunt he lived with was killed the night of the Watanagashi by a drug addict. And not long after that, he suddenly vanished and was now missing. That Satoshi and I were... what? My gaze fell to the bat in my hands. Could it be Satoshi Hajo? It was a bit difficult to see, but that was what was written on the white tape at the end of the bat. I see. So this was Satoshi's bat. Oh, this was Satoshi's bat. Since nobody was using it, I borrowed it. That's not a problem, is it? That's not it. The way Rena said it made it seem like the bat was something that should never be touched. Like it was some sort of offering at a shrine, or a memento of the deceased. I could only stand there perplexed and unable to respond. Rena continued speaking without waiting for a reply. Why is it that you're doing the exact same thing Satoshi-kun did when it happened to him? Rena was talking about more than just the bat belonging to Satoshi. It was the same with Satoshi-kun. He joined a baseball team, but he didn't really like baseball. What does that have to do with me? Satoshi-kun also suddenly started walking around with a bat one day. He joined a team, but he wasn't the type to play sports. What about it? I closed my mouth before I could say that out loud. Listen carefully, Keiichi. Ren is trying to tell us something important. Satoshi-kun also one day came to school all by himself all of a sudden, just like Keiichi-kun. Then one day he suddenly started practicing his swing, just like Keiichi-kun. Then one day he suddenly began carrying the bat around with him, just like Keiichi-kun. Then one day he suddenly... Then one day he suddenly... What? Rena had swallowed her words. Rena's suddenly silence brought a hush back to the surrounding areas. It was then I could finally digest the content of the entire conversation. She was saying my chain of actions was exactly the same as Satoshi's. What was the meaning of this? Up until now, I'd forgotten all about Satoshi. I had never paid much thought to him in the first place. Not only that, I didn't even know anything about what he had done. My actions today should have been my own creation, after all the planning I had done. But they had been the exact same as Satoshi's. Then Satoshi... No. More importantly, if both Satoshi and I acted the same way, then there was a really good possibility that what happened after would be the same. Rena, that day, what happened to Satoshi? Rena knew. She knew what became of Satoshi. No, forget about what happened to a guy in the past. Rena knew what was going to happen to me. Answer me, Rena. Satoshi, what happened to him?
With that, I grabbed Rena's shoulder violently and forcibly turned her around to face me. As I faced her, I felt a jolt travel through my entire body. I told you. Keiichi-kun. It was that person that I didn't know. At least it definitely wasn't the Rena Ryugu I'd been talking up till now. The voice now didn't have a trace of the trembling or emotion that it had before. The amount of regret I felt for turning around so carelessly was unsurpassed. That gaze that pierced like a cold needle, the smile on her face that invoked an image of having carved out by a knife. Chills went down my spine, my mind froze under a layer of rime. Both of Rena's eyes pierced through mine, leaving me unable to look away. As if to remind me of the fear from that time before, Rena brought her face close to mine, so close that I could feel her breath. Her face had filled my entire field of vision. Then her sharply shaped lips grew even sharper, like the curve of a crescent moon. She grinned. I told you. Keiichi-kun. After a short pause, Rena repeated the same words again. Satoshi-kun, you see, transferred out. Transferred meaning what? What Rena meant must have been some new definition of transfer that I was previously not aware of. My throat and lips dried up. I couldn't have acknowledged what I had just heard. All I could do was swallow down my own saliva. It would seem that Rena saw that as a nod. She pulled her gaze back and spryly stepped back 2, 3 paces. As she did, my legs gave out, and I fell to my knees pathetically. Rena and me on my knees underneath her emotionless smile. That had to be a very odd sight indeed. Seeing me in that pathetic state, she neither scoffed at me nor held out her hand, but I could neither stand nor escape with her gaze shooting through my eyes. There was undoubtedly a metal bat in my hand, but right now it was useless to me. I was like a fly caught in her web. I mean, yeah, we can't swing the bat, because a lot of power comes from the hips if you swing, as well as using your elbow kind of like a fulcrum. But what we could do is we could thrust the front part of the bat forward. We could still hit pretty hard like that. And if we aim at her knees, we should be able to break her legs. And when she goes down, that gives us time to stand back up. That way she doesn't get a chance to murder us. Heavy sweat beaded all over my body. I could feel it dripping from my skin. But you won't, will you, Keiichi-kun? Rena finally released me from the cage of time, after what felt like an eternity, but her question was missing something important, and was incredibly vague. Once again I swallowed hard, urging her on. Do what? What did she not want me to do? Transfer. Is anyone else's neck itchy? Satoshi and I had what? All my well-planned actions throughout the day turned out to be nothing more than a reenactment of what Satoshi had done. Satoshi, had he really been in the same situation as I was now? The friends he had gotten along with had changed suddenly and for no reason. At least none that I had noticed planned to kill him. And then, fearing for his life as I have, he got a bat to protect himself and carried it around every day to practice his swing. And then one day, suddenly, he transferred. My blood went cold, causing a prickling sensation to course through my veins. Starting near my heart, it radiated outwards, from the top of my head to the soles of my feet, chilling every part of me without recourse. What did she mean by transfer? What did she mean by transfer? Was Satoshi still at wherever he transferred to? Was he the only one who would be able to understand me? Would he be able to tell me why it all ended up like this? More importantly, where did he transfer to? What did she mean by transfer? What did she mean by transfer? Before I knew it, I was at my front door. The frigid knob was hard to turn. Was nobody home? It wasn't that odd of an occurrence. I reached in my pocket and pulled out my single key, attached to my fur seal keychain. I stepped into the entryway. Just as I was about to take off my shoes, a chill ran down my spine. Someone had entered right behind me. Like a classmate messing around, standing right up against my back. You're kidding, right? It had to be my imagination. Logically speaking, it was impossible for someone to be able to hide their presence within my personal space all the way through the door. But there was undoubtedly someone behind me. Hey now, Keiji. How do you know they're there, even though they're behind you? Because I could hear the sound of flowing hair. There's no other reason I'd hear that sound. That was the presence. Because I could hear the sound of them blinking. Keiji Mabura, there's no way you could hear that. It was mostly instinct than anything else that was warning me of that presence. Common sense was telling me that it was just my imagination. It was just my imagination. There was nobody behind me. I began to erase the mental image of an eerie figure standing behind me. But at the same time, I asked myself, if there was nobody, then what was I feeling? As an uncomfortably sensation crawled up my spine. Actually, wouldn't it be better if there was somebody there? If there was nobody, then when you turn around, would you be able to accept that? I'd be able to answer all those questions just by looking behind me. But I didn't have the courage to even do that simple task. Oh, right. I could try speaking to them. The person behind me might answer. It was a random thought. I didn't care how I went about it, just so long as I didn't have to turn around.
If I had to calm down and thought about it, I would have known that wouldn't have solved anything. Who is it? I spoke in such a hoarse, broken voice that I couldn't believe it was my own. I could almost feel them contemplating their response. I felt it. There's no way I should be able to do that. Calm down, Keiichi. It's all in your head. That time I was certain I heard it, as if hesitantly trying to answer my query. I was certain I could hear the sound of somebody inhaling. I heard it clearly. It was a girl, a young girl. I didn't know who, but a tiny speck of courage in me, however reckless it was, inspired a primal yet fitting solution to the current predicament. A scream. All the force in my body released from my lungs and through my throat, ceasing all thought processes in my head. Suppressing all my thoughts and emotions, I began to collapse like a house of cards, somehow managing to twist my body and look back as I did so. It was definitely there. Right there. Somebody was there. Until the moment I turned around, until I brought the area behind me into the field of motion, they were definitely there. Falling face up, my eyes traced the remnants of the presence, suspended in empty space. It couldn't be. They were invisible. They looked like they weren't there, but they were actually still standing there. As I screamed, all the emotions I was holding back burst free in a violent wave. However, I was decidedly calm as my emotional dam collapsed. The turbulent wave of pent-up emotions was skillfully diverted into a torrent of aggression. That emotion was definitely required to extricate myself from the bizarre situation happening right in front of me. In my state of heightened lucidity, I entrusted my body to the fury. The metal bat held firm in my right hand, as if drawn there by a magnet. A mid-level sweep would be the hardest attack to dodge. I remembered reading something like that from a book about swordsmanship or something like that. Ah! I brandished my will to fight. The afterimage of the amalgamation of metal flashed as it swung from right to left, beating against the entranceway. The bat slammed into the right wall, the tip rebounding violently. Very calmly, I transferred the force into the rebound of the sweep to the left. The door of the shoe cupboard was split into pieces. Those two swings whiffed through empty space, but they seemed to have great psychological impact on the enemy. I could feel the panic emanating from that space. The attack wasn't the only thing that required. I extracted the bat from the cupboard. It was embedded in and screamed as I spun my entire body around in a large arc. Rah! My screams shook the air, imbuing my ferocious swing with even more destructive power. Crack! Without mercy or restraint, my violent strike, with certainly fatal force behind it, shattered the top of the cupboard. None of my attacks struck the enemy, but my ferocity had certainly seemed to impact them. Breathing heavily, my entire body soaked in sweat. The invisible enemy, there, but not there, dispersed. Breathing heavily, my entire body soaked in sweat. The invisible enemy, there, but not there, dispersed, when I was certain that the enemy had retreated. I locked the front door and latched the chain. No way. Had it only feigned retreat and was now inside my house? Once again, I channeled my aggression and searched the house for the presence.
but it was gone. I had succeeded in fending it off. At that moment, the tension drained from my body, and I let out a deep sigh of relief. Ah! Ah! All of the emotions I had been holding back chaotically merged together and began to flood out. A hodgepodge of fear, accomplishment, disbelief, all mixed together, and began to flow through my body. Unable to deal with each individual feeling, I beat them all back with the strongest exhaustion. Even in this moment, I remained composed. After checking that all the doors throughout the house were locked, I went up to my room on the second floor and closed the curtains. I straightened my back and tilted my head back a little. After clearing my mind of all my idle thoughts, I managed to calm down even more. What was that at the front door? There was definitely something there. Thinking about it, maybe it was just an apparition. I dreamt up my confused state. But I really didn't think that was the case. Calm down, Keiichi Mabura. Compose yourself. But no matter how calmly I thought about it, what just happened wasn't a figment of my imagination. It was obviously a supernatural phenomenon, and without a doubt something was behind me. It wasn't some sort of illusion I saw amidst my confusion and disorientation. Proof. I had just one piece. When I asked who it is, they inhaled as if they were about to answer. That sound had clearly reached my ears. The situation I was in right now, it was still unclear. Either I'd been possessed by the supernatural phenomenon known as Oya Shirasama's curse, or this was a ruse by the villagers who believed in it and were imitating it. Either way, their motives were unclear. It was pretty clear they're trying to kill us. The roundabout way it had been done was still a mystery. If it was perpetrated by humans, that would mean admitting that it was Rena and the rest of them doing it. But it would be solvable. Oishi-san and the rest of the police would surely arrest my enemy. But if it was a manifestation of Oya Shirasama's curse, I wondered what would happen. Oishi-san was very clearly declared that curses didn't exist. At that time, those words were pretty dependable, but as things were now, with the rising possibility the perpetrators were not human, he suddenly seemed quite unreliable. If I told Oishi-san this was the work of Oishira-sama's curse, what would happen? I couldn't imagine his reaction, but it would go without a question that a void would expand rapidly between myself and Oishi-san. With me having so few allies to begin with, and not being able to confidently declare whether or not this was a curse or not, there was no merit to doing that. I'd better keep the facts of what just happened at the doorway to myself. It would be better if I didn't add what happened here to the memo behind the clock. There was still the ever so slight possibility that I was actually confused when I thought I was composed, and I was just going berserk in the entryway. How wonderful would that be, that really what happened? I would be able to refute Oishira-sama's curse, but if I denied Oishira-sama's curse, then that would mean admitting that Ren and the rest were the perpetrators. If I said that Ren and the rest weren't the perpetrators, then that would mean believing in Oishira-sama's curse. By denying both of those, I would be admitting that I was losing it. The three options from which I couldn't choose became a trilema of sorts. They mixed together and formed a whirlpool in my mind, making my head spin. Once again, I straightened myself and leaned my head back slightly to cool myself down. Calm down, Keiichi. Accept what has actually happened as reality. Stop thinking of anything more than that. But I couldn't help but think of it. How wonderful it would be if it turned out I was delirious, and everything up until now was a figment of my imagination. Oishira-sama's curse wouldn't exist, and I would still be bestest buddies with Rena and the rest. I would have to be crazy. That was the first time in my life I'd ever wished for such a thing.
phone rang noisily downstairs. Generally, there were no calls from me, so I really never answered the phone much. But since my parents weren't here, I had no choice. I squirmed off the bed and went downstairs. Hello? This is the Marlborough residence. Keiichi? This is Mom. I intuitively had a bad feeling about this. It was because I thought she was going to ask me to go out and buy some things. So I took the initiative. What? I don't mind having instant noodles for dinner. There's still a lot of them. The other day we went out as a family and bought a whole case of cup noodles. I wanted to get a bunch of different kinds, actually, but they refused since the individual packs were expensive. So instead I got a whole case of mega-sized pork bone and ginger-flavored ones I liked. But my parents don't like strong flavors, and don't touch any of them, so the cupboards were still full of them. So you see, there really isn't any need to go shopping, right? Keiichi, I'm not asking you to go shopping. Both Mommy and Daddy have to go to Tokyo right now because of work. Huh? Right now? This was really abrupt. No, we're already here. We left this afternoon. It's quite a distance to Tokyo from Hinamazawa. Gunning at full speed down the highway would still take 6 hours. Dad has a license, but since he doesn't like the highway, they likely took the train. It would have taken longer. I'm thinking you might understand since you heard us speaking last night. But it has to do with Daddy's contract right now. Things aren't going so smoothly. Now that she mentioned it, I did remember they talked all the time about how his job prospects weren't looking so good. Daddy is really sensitive about things like this, so if we leave things as they are, it will affect his work. Part of my father's particular fragile artistic personality, his emotions changed as easily as the fall sky. You could also say he couldn't take criticism. But something like that can be done over the phone. Keiichi, this is your father's job, so can you support him a bit, please? Anyways, it's just faster to talk about it in person, so there wouldn't be any misunderstandings. As their son, there was nothing more I could say once they started talking about work. So, we'll be back tomorrow night. Keiichi, will you be fine on your own? It's not like I'll die or anything.